And now, ladies and gentlemen, is the moment I'm particularly looking forward to. I would like to announce a man who has set standards and achieved great things with his actions and commitment. The lawyer, Dr. Christian Patermann, is one of the pioneers of the bioeconomy in Europe. As former director of the European Commission, he shaped the design of the relevant research framework programs from 1996 to 2007. Since his retirement, Mr. Patermann has been an advisor to numerous private and public institutions and was a founding member of the first German Bioeconomy Council in 2009. But now, listen for yourself to Peter Putsch's authentic story of how Mr. Patermann came to be part of our program in the first place. So, it's your scene.
As I mentioned earlier, I had the pleasure of inviting Dr. Patermann to deliver the keynote speech at our Congress, and he graciously accepted. I must share how we met. It was at a CBE conference last year in Brussels, and our last names had the same letter P, and it happened that we were in the same queue of the registration. So I struck up a conversation, and as immediately struck by what a nice person he is. It was an honor to meet the famous father of European bioeconomy and a very approachable man. Now, without further ado, I invite you to enjoy his keynote speech on the topic, Recent Developments of the Bioeconomy in Europe and Worldwide, Current Crisis as Your Opportunities. Mr. Patermann, thank you.
Well, these are, I'm very sorry to say, too many flowers, and I hope that I'm not going to disappoint you. But first of all, I'd like to thank you very much, all of you in all corners of the world where you're listening or looking at us here. And I tell you, I'm quite flattered and quite proud to be here today in the Halle region, which for at least 2 days will be the capital of bioeconomy and biopolymers, at least in Germany or Central Europe. Let's qualify like that. And you all have the big honor and also the chance to be there. So thank you for your very, very kind words. But indeed, you know, all the topics we are facing are extremely important and relevant. I need not to tell you, and the words of the Prime Minister of Saxony-Anhalt, they were quite outspoken on this. I want to congratulate you that it is the 5th anniversary of the 5th edition of your excellent biopolymer conference, which is quite unique in Europe. And I'm very proud that I now can give you, within the next 20 to 22 minutes, I always have the privilege to have 10% in addition, at least I take that liberty, to tell you about the recent developments of the bioeconomy in Europe, but also worldwide. And we live in polycrisis ambiente, as people say, you know, and have crisis as opportunities, like an old Chinese word for crisis is at the same time the sign of the opportunity. I like to start to give you, many people might have seen that already, the first ever political definition of the bioeconomy, which dates from 2004 in a document of the OECD. And it was a footnote. The bioeconomy started as a footnote. That is wonderful. And here you have very important buzzwords, which we have to fill with content. A bio-based economy is defined as a concept that uses renewable bioresources. This is the key word, but also efficient bioprocesses and eco-industrial, at that time already, 2004, clusters. You know, at that time, you know, we were going to talk to a mayor in a city somewhere on a cluster. He was looking at that. What is it? Cluster. So it was already mentioned that. And then they come what is absolutely necessary, production of sustainable bioproducts, jobs and incomes. So, dear friends, just to recall for a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, these biological resources are the key, and they are also the key with their features, you know, for any solutions with respect and around the bioplastics and biopolymer situation. And why are they so important? And we were, when we started with all these things in 2004, 2005, 2006, and there are some people around here who have been witnessing that, you know, there were 4 features which are still very valid today. The first one, biological resources. That means plants, animals, microorganisms, insects. They are renewable. The second one, they are, if you take them in the right way, the right scale, in the right manner, you know, they are quite friendly with respect to CO2. They are really tending to carbon neutrality. And that's where you have the carbon as the really essential feature in that. And the third point is, there is an inherent element of multi-use in the format of cascades. That means the recyclability, the circularity has been from the very beginning a very important feature in any biological resources. I want to say that to all those people who are very strongly preaching the circular economy as a movement, which I am, by the way, was one of the founders as well in the Karl-Lundborg Declaration in 2002. Many people have no idea when that started. And the fourth thing is extremely important for the economy. And that is, you have their features which make a product, a material, longer living, more robust, with less or no toxicity, and also having other haptic features, for example, simply to be better than fossil ones. But there are other USPs which are sometimes neglected. The bioeconomy, and also within this concept, the dealing with bioplastics. It is the enabling value economy we have. There is no other no other concept of an economy in the world which is more focusing on values. Adding value, like the Finnish strategy of last year says, sustainable towards higher value added, just has been taken up by the new Finnish government a few days ago. Again, very, very strong position on that. It's appreciating the value chains and also the natural capital as the fundament of its concept. And last but not least, it's very, very open for integrating new knowledge which is produced by neighboring technologies like nano, like info, like cognitive sciences, but also like digital developments and artificial intelligence. And very, very recent, we have another movement which comes from Latin America, and that means adding values of indigenous people. That is something which we in Europe are not that familiar with, because we just have the Samis in Finland to be as old indigenous peoples that, but in many other continents they are still living. Now today it's no wonder that we have, starting with the bioeconomy as a research and technology concept in 15, 18 years ago. Now today it has been a policy, an economy model by itself. And you have more than 60 states all over the world which have, together with quite a lot of regions, and the number is increasing weekly, which have dedicated programs or strategies or action plans which carry the dedicated name of bioeconomy or are very close to that. And very recently, last year, you know, we have a strong reappearance of the bio giants, the United States and China on this stage, and I'm going to tell you about that a little later. We have a lot of regional activities, and this here in Halle is a very good example for that, but their number is, the last 2-3 years, slowing down. And we have much more, if I may say so now, a movement which is stronger than before, focusing on biotechnology as a driving force, not that much on the environment, but biotechnologies, biomanufacturing, and also biofuel production. Not necessarily in Europe, but Europe is only one of 7 continents, as you know. So one has to say, and with that I'd like to sum up the introduction, you know, I want to say that after the 18 years when we started with this, we have not a single fitting for all bioeconomy as such, but we will have a growing number of different bioeconomies which are regionally different, which have a strong variety, and with this variety also offering new strength. This will have a lot of impacts, and I'm not going to give you too many details on that, on the framework which are accompanying the development of the bioeconomy. Just to run down the recent developments in the last 2 years, 2021, we had quite a few, you can read them here, Uruguay, Catalonia, the Basque region, Portugal, Finland last year, the Republic of China, and that was extremely important in May last year, about 1 year ago. They, for the first time, had their national bioeconomy, not strategy, they call it plan, within the 15th 4 years plan which they had. And they were titling it, there's not yet an official English version on that, quite interesting. Bioeconomy is life sciences and biotechnology. And then the USA, the United States of America, were catching up with a big bioeconomy summit in the White House in September. And I'm going to tell you a little more about that, because that might lead a lot of activities also in the biomanufacturing and the bioplastics area in the future. We have also countries far away like Namibia and Queensland, you know, which have just finished with their strategies. And in this year, we expect Sweden, in Europe, Croatia, Estonia, and then far-reaching New Zealand to come up with their strategies. Now, in Germany, it's a little 50-50, let me put it like that. We have also strong regional recent developments like in Northern Westphalia and Lower Saxony, which in their so-called coalition agreements have dedicatedly stressed the need for having new strategies and also the establishment of bioeconomy councils for giving advice to the governments. But we'll see how that comes up. And there's a very strong focus, in particular in North Rhine-Westphalia, on the greening of chemistry with the help of the bioeconomy. Also, on the multilateral scale, we see a big wake-up, which for you, as this is a global event, might be of interest, and that is the G20. President Modi in India has taken up the United States initiative of biomanufacturing and biotechnology for a US bioeconomy and wants to have its own Indian biomanufacturing policy still in the next 6 months. We had within the United Nations Food Systems Summit, the bioeconomy playing a very relevant role last year. And I'm going in a few days to Hanover to take part in a preparatory meeting for the next Global Bioeconomy Summit, which in the last 3 times we're also in Berlin, and we'll see where we are going to have it. This time the Volkswagen Foundation has invited us to Hanover, this advisory group, to talk about. But important is also APEC and ASEAN. The so-called Bangkok goals. They have propagated the so-called BCGE as the concept for the Asian Pacific region. BCGE, Bio, Circular, Green Economy. Not very many people know that over here in Europe. It's sometimes I'm a little sorry for that, because they are now having a lot of interesting labs, but also activities which we should carefully look at. And in this respect, I'm very curious to what extent our Vietnamese friends later on are going to tell us more about the Asian market. And you're absolutely right in putting your eggs in this basket. A very good overview, just to round up here, is this document, which you can later on, you can have all these slides, you know, to find out what happened in Europe. And I want now to come to content. Circularity and sustainable development will be key key activities for the bioeconomy. And they were going very strongly to focus on these activities in neighboring, in integrating, but also maybe in making differences between all these three movements. But we have additional trends beside the optimizing of SDGs. I'm not going to bore you with this wonderful slide where you see that it's 17 SDGs. You know, everybody knows that, and no good conference can work without that today. Now, I'm going to refer to you also some additional recent trends between these optimizing of the SDGs and the circular economy. And there's one point which you should think about also with respect to biopolymers. That is the attention of closing the cycles in the supply of so-called critical raw materials, CRM, which the experts know already for a long time are very important. Lithium, cobalt, phosphorus, etc., which are indispensable for all the new developments, from 3D to e-mobility to additive manufacturing, 4D printing, artificial intelligence, recovery of phosphorus, etc., etc. Without them, we will not be able to foster and master the future. And these CRMs, the CRM availability, the Critical Raw Material Act the European Commission just approved, you know, are also a very important field for the future of your work. And another very important trend is the increased complexities and diversities which we probably are not able to, avoid, which make our life more difficult. And that is, in addition, after the pandemic, we have now sustainable health aspects to become. You know, we started with that already 15, 16 years ago, but it got lost. But now, you know, health is coming back to become a potential agenda point in Europe and also in other parts of the world. And then job creation, which sometimes tends to get away because everybody talks about climate protection, etc., and biodiversity. We need also to offer home, dwellings, safety, but also jobs. And that is quite interesting in this area here, the revitalization of old industrial complexes, where Germany, I think, could take a leading role. They do it in the Biorevier near Aachen, Cologne, etc., where the brown coal fields are being abandoned. And now we need new models. And here, I think, biopolymers, their production, their use, and within the bioeconomy concept will play a very important role. Now, we also have a very interesting additional trend among all these growing complexities. That is, we see emerging new bioinfrastructures other than biorefineries. For example, so-called biofoundries, biofactories, where the use of carbon is very, very focused and central. And keep that, please, in mind. A second very important, trend in the last 3-4 years is scaling up. In particular in Europe, you have a lot of very, very good startup companies. You have medium industries, which are excellent, but you can't do it without scaling up. And that should be a very important topic for the future. And I think you're in the middle of that also in your own discussions on the future of your own facilities. And then we need not to forget the so-called blue skills or soft skills. You know, that means education and training. We tend to underestimate this importance, the relevance for education, skill, and training, starting from schools, from primary, secondary, going to universities and applied universities. And then we need new ways of funding communication, etc. Now, I like to stress very strongly also, you know, the follow-up of the pandemic, which I think will also change our attitudes towards some content. And that is, I think we are going to pay more attention to livestock issues. Pandemic, fighting zoonosis and epizoonosis. We will have, a lot of increased demands for new materials, also, if I may say so, for protection, for safety, for new value chains. In the private protection equipment areas, we will have, for example, in the textile industries, the need for virus and virus-free resistant packaging materials, etc., etc., and also touchless materials, new fibers, nanoparticles, nanomaterials, etc. So in all these areas, the bioelement will play a very, very important role. And we will have in the area of food the need not only for getting away from meat production and consumption, but also the demand for longer shelf times of fruit and food and etc. And therefore, the so-called bio-based solutions are playing a growing role, and we need to identify new post-pandemic value chains. And there, I think the biopolymer discussion and issues will play a very important role. And during the Ukrainian crisis, you know, we had a lot of importance put on energy. This will not go away, but also on sovereignty. And here another big buzzword comes in where biopolymers are playing a role, and that's resilience. Resilience, the new word for autonomy, or if I may say so, sovereignty. So let's see to what extent these follow-ups, this will demand for follow-ups in our discussions. Now, I see that my time is approaching to come to an end, and therefore I'm like to go to finish with a very strong plea to you to look what the US is doing at this moment. Because in the United States, we have a tacit, we have a secret revolution going on. With their executive order on biomanufacturing and biotechnology, the United States is really putting billions of euros in these developments. And here you can see the focusing on the items which are to some extent different than what we have in Europe. You know, they are looking much stronger on the biomanufacturing workforce, on regulatory clarity and efficiency, etc. But there's also one important point, and that is they look strongly on biopolymer. And I'm going to read out to you in a document which I strongly recommend you to read. And that means Bold Goals of the US Biomanufacturing and Biotechnology, the vision for them to read that document. And there they have, it's very, very interesting, a very important goal. They want to say within the chemicals and materials part, in the adaptation to climate change, they want to stir up a circular bioeconomy for materials. And they say, in 20 years, we want to demonstrate and deploy cost-effective and sustainable routes to convert bio-based feedstocks into recyclable by design polymers that can displace more than 90% of today's plastics and other commercial polymers at scale. No other strategy in the world has ever highlighted the relevance and the goal of biopolymers in this respect than the United States is doing. And I want to really, really ask you to look at that and to very closely follow and monitor what the United States is doing. So that is extremely encouraging. And I also want to tell you that in Europe, we have really taken up that challenge. And the Europa Bio Association has just arranged a few weeks ago a biomanufacturing summit in Brussels. But now it's up to you to jump on the bandwagon, if I may say so, and also see what China is doing. In China, we have at this moment, and for those of you who have been in China Plus, they will confirm that, we have about a dozen of bio-based PLA facilities and refineries being built up, being constructed, a dozen. And in total, the Chinese, according to their national plan, foresee 70 bio-based PLA facilities in the next 3 years. Now it's up to you. Now, what have we done in Europe? We just have the decision of Futero to have for €500 million near Caux in Le Havre, such a facility. But on the other hand, one which was already constructed in Grand Puy by Corbion and Total is just being abandoned. So it's a little, let me say, difficult in Europe to follow at that moment. But it's a very exciting moment, if I may say so. It's a very exciting time frame and time window in which I can only encourage you to push, not only push, but push. I thank you very, very much for your attention and wish you a very good and successful conference and also follow-up, because many, many people are going to conferences, but the result is very difficult to observe. This should not happen here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Christian Patermann, for your impressive keynote. It is really an honor to have you here. We are very happy about this. And now I would like to introduce Peter Putsch again and would like to start the Q&A session. And you are also happy to ask questions from the audience.
At first, I would like to thank you for this very strong keynote, and you want to push us, and I think this will state a new standard in keynotes. I think that was excellent. Of course, my question is, as you are a connoisseur of the European politics, what can we do that we get the biopolymer more on the European agenda?
Mm-hmm. I see 3 points. First of all, some technical points, which is maybe known to not to everyone. Try to enter the fabric, the system of the European Union, the European Commission, and that is focus to the framework program, and in this respect to CBE, Circular Bioeconomy Europe 2030. And there try to have your activities visible in demonstration projects and also a lighthouse project. This is extremely important, and it should help you to point out what the United States, what China, and what Thailand, for example, is doing. So that is the first point. Try to convince the European officials with that. But second point is you can only do that when you have support by industry. That's very important. So you have to rally the support of bio-industries. And in that respect, I see a big deficit in Europe, because everybody talks about digital industries, about now artificial intelligence, energy, etc., etc. But bio-industries, which are being built up in Asia at that moment, and in the United States, are also a very important complex Europe, and the European Commission should focus more. And third point, you should also convince the, let me say, political stakeholders. That means the interested audiences who read the, let me say, the Financial Times, who read the Frankfurter Allgemeine, etc., and launching sometimes some important articles, and also within interviews of TV and the mass media, like the channels, the social channels, then also to push up this with practical cases. You know, this is becoming so complex, our life and our world today. You need to convince with understandable, with not only narratives, they're sometimes becoming too complicated as well, but concrete cases where you say, this is better than this. This has a longer lifetime. You know, the caoutchouc which you use for this tire is having 5 to 7 or 8 years longer than this one. Or this is lighter. Or the toxicity which you have in the recycling process for this or that textile is less, etc. Or it's just none. This you have to show. So these would be my 3 points for putting it on the agenda.
Thank you very much. So now, do we have a question from the audience? Okay, so you can come to the microphone, please.
Thank you very much for that very motivating speech. I really appreciate it. You described a lot of the global initiatives that exist internationally, and they are at different levels of maturity. What could we do to be more streamlined and learn and leverage from our international counterparts?
That's not easy, because all these international activities have a big disadvantage. They tend to be very quickly closed shops, unfortunately. This is with the COP in environment, this is with the biodiversity, this is also with OECD. You should identify people within your networks of companies, within your networks of followers, if I may say so. And you should maybe also establish a kind of influencer, you know, within the associations of industries which you are representing, your branch associations and representations, which is a little neglected in the ambiente of industrial associations. And then try to find out the right people with whom you can speak. I can't give you a general valid recipe for that, you know, because all these international activities are differing very much. But we can talk about that a little later, but try to find out people who are already involved in that. Sometimes it's even more difficult to find out that there is such an initiative, you know, because as I say to you, you know, they tend to be very quickly closed shops, unfortunately. It's the time of our times. It's a signal of our times.
Good. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, we would close the Q&A for now. And yeah, thank you so much for being with us. Really, thank you so much for the impressive keynote and for answering the question. And we wish you all the best, Dr. Patermann, and hope to see you again next year, maybe. Thank you. Thank you very much to you.